Okay. Right. Nope.
Have I turned it off? Is that better? Thanks. Thanks, Ron. So this paper, it's an update on one that was given in 2022 at the conference by Pamela and by Moira Rankin, Senior Archivist at University. And that introduced the Diversity History Project at the University in 2022. The report really, or the work has its roots, I suppose, much before that. In 2018, a report was submitted to the University, Slavery, Abolition and the University of Glasgow, which looked at how the university benefited from the transatlantic slave trade and then led to a reparative justice strategy on the back of that. So we're going to do two things in the session today. Pamela will give you an overview of the project and the report that was produced and then submitted to the university's senior management group. And then I'll set out what we're doing in response to that project and that report. So Pamela sends her apologies. She can't be here today. She's very busy and diligent with family life and with research commitments. But she has sent us a video presentation. So I will cue her up just now, hand over to Pamela virtually, and then I'll join you at the end afterwards to talk about what we're doing in response to her work. So here's Pamela.
Good afternoon from Brussels. It is a pleasure to participate in this conference to discuss about some of the key findings of research that I conducted at the University of Glasgow almost 2 years ago now. I wish I was there with you in Glasgow, but I had prior professional and personal commitments. At the end of 2022, during the ACA SUV conference in Montreal, Moira Rankin from the University of Glasgow and I presented the initial findings of this research project. After that conference, we produced a final report with the key findings and recommendations. Today, I will briefly present the research findings, which can be found in detail in the report. I will first give a brief description of the project and the methodology we use before discussing the key findings. I will finally reflect on the research process. The Diversity Research Project officially started in January 2022. It was a response to the Understanding Racism Transforming University Culture report published in 2021, which presented findings on racial discrimination within the campus and provided recommendations on how to address it. It was a collaborative project between the library and the College of Arts. It was an exploratory research which sought to analyze the university's archives and reports with the aim of enhancing our understanding of the challenges around student and staff diversity between 1880 and 1980. In 2023, a report with key findings and recommendations was produced by the team. The aim of the report was to inform the senior university management on research perspectives and methods that can uncover further some of the origins and rootedness of today's cultures of inclusion and exclusion. In the first year of the project, the research was gathered by 7 questions, including what are the main trends in the work and composition of Glasgow International Student Body? How did the university conceive of and regulate matters of ethnic diversity? What can the university own archives and reports reveal about the institution's historical systems and processes? How, when, and through what means the university seeks to develop an inclusive and progressive set of practices and attitudes to ethnic diversity? How did students with ethnically diverse backgrounds react and resist to negative experiences at Glasgow University? In what ways and with what consequences were ethnically diverse students able to use their time at Glasgow University to influence their whole society and or countries where they moved afterwards? What contemporary lessons are there for the university community arising from the historical experiences of ethnically diverse students? To achieve these aims and address the questions that I just mentioned, we reviewed several archival records from the university's archives and special collection. The sources consulted include the student handbooks, university calendars, research output, teaching material, exam, essays, lecture notes, personal papers of influential scholars and alumni, and newspapers. We also consulted databases and created material derived from institutional records and developed by earlier scholarships, such as the Overseas Students Record. This is a database of over 9,000 overseas students matriculated in Glasgow University between 1880 and 1955. We primarily use qualitative research methods, particularly discourse analysis, to analyze the data. Initially, we wanted to carry out some quantitative analysis using the database for overseas students. However, we decided not to do so within the first year of this project. Although the database was very useful in giving us data on specific students and in revealing indicative trends in diversity over time, it required consistent and time-consuming verification. There were a number of issues in the dataset, which I explained in greater detail in the report. Sources consulted indicate that some overseas students experience everyday forms of marginalization, racism, and discrimination at the University of Glasgow. I will share with you some examples which are really self-explanatory. These are some excerpts from the handbooks. They describe the objectives and membership of the Indian Students' Union in the late 1930s and the British Fascist Club, Glasgow University Group in the mid-1920s. Sources also contain disturbing racist visual representation, such as this image in the section describing the Glasgow University Missionary Society in 1924. There is also evidence that some students voiced big concerns about discrimination and that the worries and complaints were often downplayed or dismissed. This process occurred using the university departmental structure, academic hierarchy, and relation with external bodies such as the British Council. The case of the African Students' Union is revealing. The union was created in 1970 and was then called African Races Association. It appeared for the first time in the handbooks in 1939. For 20 years, the issue of racism was never mentioned in the handbook. Yet, there was a major shift in 1949. Here's a passage of the union's effort. It says, lack of understanding results in needless differences. This is especially true between the Western world on one hand and the so-called backward people on the other. It is in this field that the African Students' Union functions, aiming principally at making the African better understood in Glasgow and promoting among its members a knowledge of people from other parts of the world. In this way, it believes the notorious color prejudice, which still exists, though unofficially, can largely be broken down. This extract raises several questions regarding the factors which influenced this shift in language at the time. After 1949, the union was absent in the handbooks for 3 years. When it reappeared again, there were 4 striking changes in description. First, its message was depoliticized, and there was no longer a mention of racism. Second, the statement appears to be othering the African students, through that which they reminded them that they were visitors of the Scottish coast. Third, there was an inclusion for the first time of a white male staff office holder as honorary president. Finally, members were invited to meet up in the British office, which was located outside the campus. In the article on colonial students in Britain at the end of the empire, Stockwell shows how the British Council, along with the colonial office, tried to monitor the activities of students from the colonies, especially after the Second World War. This begs the question of knowing whether these changes intended to control, silence, or contain potential political activities of students from the colonies. I think this is a subject for further research. One finding was that there were striking contradictions and paradoxes which highlight the complexities and intersections of levels of oppression. This is the case of the South African Student Club, an international club in the late 1920s. The South African club had an increasing number of women office bearers, which was rare at the time, while at the same time excluding non-whites and referring to African with racist terms. So while the club was progressive regarding the inclusion of women, the society discriminated against non-whites. Conversely, while the international club's declared objectives were those of uniting students with nationalities in the university, the society nevertheless excluded women from having full membership and participating in all the activities of the club. It also appeared that there were embedded structures of oppression within the university, reflecting and reinforcing the patterns of discrimination in broader society. An example would be the university registration forms, which for a long time only asked for the father's name. These forms also assumed that everyone had a Christian name. Although the information in the archives and special collection was patchy for the period that we're covering, the qualifications of activist movements and individuals who were or claimed to be against racial discrimination and for the promotion of equality amongst people of different ethnicity. Still can be explored, for instance, through the anti-apartheid movement. It's clear that there was an active anti-apartheid movement among students at the University of Glasgow, especially from the 1950s. Excerpts that we consulted demonstrates that most of the campaign centered around raising awareness of apartheid, gathering funds to support those affected by the prison trial and their families, and boycotting South African products. At the end, the project raised more questions that require further research. A crucial question is how to capture the voices that have been silent in the preservation and archival process. Is there a way of genuinely capturing these voices? When I started the research, I was very excited about the project and all the efforts that the university has been undertaking to reflect on the complex links with slavery and colonialism and empire, as well as its efforts to combat racism on campus and beyond. The research touched upon issues that I have faced as an Afro-descendant woman studying and working in the university for over a decade. Working with active librarian historians and social scientists is very enriching. The team tried to move away from the traditional top-down approach towards a more collaborative approach, whereby we draw from each other expertise and knowledge. Thank you very much.
Pamela talked about collaboration there quite a lot at the end in between historians, social scientists, and archives and special collections staff. And that was one of the real strengths, I think, of the project. And we're going to come back to it later on, but if you take one thing from this session today, I think it's the value of collaboration. Pamela described the experience as enriching, and I know that from our team's point of view, it was a privilege to work alongside her and see the collections through her eyes, but also an emotional experience to be looking at discrimination at the university from a different perspective. So the next step for us is to take the report produced and the spirit of that report and try and turn it into embedded practice at the university. So I'm going to tell you about some of our plans to do this, and I'll look a bit about our new Heritage Collections Engagement Service, and then we'll look at some specific things we're doing in response to the project and how that impacts how we tell the story of the university. So first, a very quick bit of background about the University of Glasgow and about archives and special collections. This slide is from the university's corporate slide deck, the one everyone who's presenting is encouraged to use. And I included it just to show you an example of how it uses its history. So there are a couple of points there, the top one and the bottom one. So established in 1451, so around for a very long time, and connection to 8 Nobel laureates, the bottom, which speaks a long track record of excellence. So you see there are certain parts of the university's history that it puts front and centre. And it's interesting to think about that in the context of what Pamela was talking about earlier. It's also important to think about the city here of Glasgow, the Glasgowness of the university, I suppose, It's a civic institution developed alongside the city as it grew from a small medieval borough up into the second city of the British Empire in the 19th century. And that connection is important when we think about its past as a site of imperialism, I suppose. If any of you were at the city chambers yesterday, you might have seen quite a very visual example of how Glasgow saw itself in the 19th century. Yes. And this is just a very quick overview of archives and special collections. I won't go into detail about these points because it's nice to be in a room full of record professionals. You all understand how wonderful and important our collections are. I don't need to tell you about them. But the one I want to pick up on there is the last one, that the records have evidence of what the university does and how it does it. And this is where our heritage engagement comes in. It's about thinking about our collections not just as great resources for learning and teaching and research, which they are, of course, but as corporate business assets. So the university's history is one of its best assets. You can see it in the corporate slide from earlier on. So how do we expand on that and empower colleagues to use that history and the collections to support their work and what they're doing? So that could be around marketing and branding, it could be around student recruitment, alumni and donor relations, all sorts of different activities. It's not a new concept, I have to say. It's been happening at the university for a long time, and certainly before I started at the end of last year. So my colleagues, past and present, have done vast amounts of work on this already. I'm just standing here and taking the credit for it and talking about it. But the project did help build a business case for my post as part of an investment as an institution into looking seriously at aspects of its past and going back to that slavery report back in 2018 and the work that led up to that. So what we're trying to do now is to formalise that work, to look strategically at how we can build heritage into what the university is doing today and to support those big priorities, but do it in a way that carries on the spirit of the Diversity History Project. In practical terms, we set up what we call a heritage collections work stream, and that joins up our front of house activities like how we deliver and support engagement with the back of house functions that underpin that, like what we collect and our processing and cataloguing activities. And that means we can be more proactive rather than just reactive in how we drive engagement with the university's history. And at the heart of that, I guess, is good storytelling. And leading on from this project, we want to make sure that this storytelling is done based on evidence and done responsibly. Now, one of the ways that the university tells its story is commemorating anniversaries of important events and people. We heard bits involved about that yesterday and earlier today. So in recent years, we had James Watt, the inventor, Adam Smith, the economist, and this year it's the 200th birthday of Lord Kelvin, the famous scientist and inventor, a long connection to the university. And also, as you'll see, another white man with a beard and some challenge. So what we want to try and do is to work with colleagues who are commemorating figures like Kelvin and to take a broader view of their lives and legacies. So for Kelvin, he made tremendous scientific breakthroughs, and while there's no suggestion of him being as problematic as some of these figures, he was also a man of his time. He was a man of empire, he played a part in a global system that created losers as well as winners. So what we want to do is to help put the person and the achievements in some kind of context. And that applies not just to people, but to the events as well. It's a key principle that runs through what we're doing here. To give you a wee idea of the work we still have to do, this is arranged in the university's gift shop. Not having, it's quite nice, a good pun. Kelvin, of course, invented the absolute temperature scale, absolute zero, and it's a nice range, quite cute. And I think it's reached its target audience quite well. And Kelvin is a hero to many people, but nobody is absolutely anything. That's the kind of point that we're trying to make. I have a 4-year-old daughter, so I watch a lot of Disney movies, and I find myself having to explain whether characters, she's very obsessed with whether characters are goodies or baddies. They have to be one or the other. And I find myself saying, well, life's not that simple. People are complicated. Principles, I think you see what I'm getting at. The principle is kind of the same. And we want to encourage a bit of critical reflection and the use of evidence. So I think it's an illustration of the work we still have to do. Which brings me to what we are doing. So I mentioned our approach being to empower our colleagues to use the university's history. We don't want to be doing everything ourselves, and we can't, frankly. We want to create a framework that brings people along with us. So within the university, we have these fantastic collections and expertise within the team about what they are and how they can be used. We have a community of practitioners who want to tell the story of the university for a range of audiences. And we also have a community of professional historians who have the skills to critically evaluate evidence. We're interested in that bit in the middle there. What happens when we bring these groups together? And can we join things up and to create an approach which adds value to the work of our colleagues, and with the collections acting as a kind of hub rather than us controlling the messaging about our history. So we are working with our programme delivery team and our external relations directorate to hold a workshop to bring all those groups together to try and lay this foundation about how to create a responsible, evidence-based approach to how we tell the institution's story, and a practical resource from that, like a toolkit or something that colleagues can use. So how can we marry the needs of communications professionals, for example, who want to tell the story of the university, and inspiring one of that, and with the need to tell that story properly and based on evidence. Another thing we're doing is campus development work and supporting that, specifically around the naming of new buildings. So we provide briefings on the names that are being proposed for new buildings to try and put them in some sort of context. Now, our recommendations don't necessarily get taken on. I think it shows the importance of bringing colleagues along with us when we're doing this sort of work, and that can be difficult at times. We're also working with our historians to critically reappraise the university's history. So we look at the core published works that have been produced from the 19th century onwards, the one that all the storytelling since has been based on. Look at the perspective from which they were written, and what they tell us and what they don't tell us, where the gaps are. We've heard quite a lot of gaps over the last couple of days, and whose voice is present and whose voice is not present, and work out how relevant they are to the ways the university sees itself today. And then we can work with colleagues on how we can address those gaps. So in 2026, the university is going to be 575 years old, which is a good opportunity for us to look back and to look forward, and to build on the ways the university has engaged with the past, including the Diversity History Project, and to think about where it wants to go in the future. And it's this focus on the future that I think is really important. So with all this work, we're looking forward as much as we are looking back. We don't want to talk about the past for the sake of it. We want to do it strategically. We want to look at the areas we can influence, where we can add value, and to try and do that work in the spirit of the Diversity History Report and carry on that work. So I hope it gives you an idea of how the project has progressed over the last few years since you last heard in 2022, and what we're trying to do now to embed that evidence-based approach into how we look at the institution's history. So I'm really excited to see how this develops over the next wee while, and be very happy to share our lessons as we go along, and also have a chat to anyone who's doing similar work, and of course take any questions that you have afterwards.
Everyone. So the question is, what does diversity mean to you? And why decolonization in archives? Okay, can you hear me? Okay. So the question is, what does diversity mean to you, and why decolonization in archives? So diversity in archives to me simply means ensuring that the collection reflects a wide range of voices and experiences, especially of those from historically marginalized groups. This also includes making sure that records from different races, gender, cultures, abilities, and other backgrounds are preserved and are accessible. An important process ensuring diversity in our collection in the National Library of Wales is through decolonization. Decolonization, I would say, isn't about undoing the past as it is often misconcepted. In my opinion, it's creating a present and a future despite our not so pleasant past. It is not about wiping away slates and starting afresh, or about making people feel uncomfortable. It is making, I often like to say, it's making lemonades out of lemons. So yeah, my name is Miidong Daloeng. I am the Decolonization Project Officer at the National Library of Wales, and I am grateful for the organizers of this conference for such an opportunity to share the work we are doing in regards to diversity and decolonization in the National Library of Wales. So in 2022, the Welsh government enacted the Wales Anti-Racist Action Plan after a lengthy period of consultation and engagement with various communities in Wales. This action plan was born out of necessity, and it was set and it was set out to combat structural inequalities in order to make measurable changes in the lives of Black, Asian, and other ethnicities in Wales, with the hope of achieving a Wales free of racism by the year 2030. I know it sounds vague, but that's the plan. So the ultimate goal of the Wales Anti-Racist Plan is to create a Wales that is proudly inclusive, which is home for everyone, and which would mean that everyone would be treated equally and fairly, and every stories and histories will be collected and preserved for future generations. Now, why diversity? Some people may ask. Searching for diverse voices in our collection, in our archive collection can be difficult. This is because many archive records, particularly those before the 20th century, were created by official bodies such as local governments, courts, or churches, or powerful and landed families. It is possible to find representation and diversity in our collection, but it would mean you would have to do some literal thinking, a bit of background search, and a lot of questions too. You would have to ask lots of questions. As much as some history can be problematic, it is important that they are addressed, discussed, and reflected upon. Secondly, by diversifying our archives, it ensures that our collections reflects the realities of the communities that we serve, not just those who were historically in power. This inclusivity enriches our understanding of history and culture. It gives room for a better understanding and appreciation of the world today. Third, every library or archives are created for people as much as they are created for preserving history and the stories of people. And without people coming in to make use of those archives, the aim of its creation is being defeated. Engaging with diverse communities helps us to build trust and ensure that these archives serve as accessible resources for everyone. Diversity ensures collaboration with communities and groups to better understand their needs and perspective, enjoy participation, and in turn shape the society in a positive way. We can never underestimate the power of archives in shaping society. So the National Library of Wales was established in 1907, and with a collection of over 6 million books, 40,000 manuscripts, and over 1.5 million maps. The National Library, like most institutions of learning and research, has in its cares items and entries that are problematic in nature, underutilized, and not the proper representation of Wales and its people. With the support and the funding of the Welsh government, the library began a work in response to these challenges, and after careful reflection, embarked on various programs to improve, showcase, and develop a more worthy collection that reflects the diversity in Wales. That is how the Decolonization project came. That is how the Decolonization project was birthed. Decolonization, I would like to add, is about more than just revisiting history. It's about reshaping our understanding and ensuring that the narratives we preserve and promote are inclusive and representative of all communities. The National Library of Wales has taken significant steps to address these issues, and today I will be highlighting some of them, some of the key projects and activities we have carried out. First, the Wales and the World Calendar. The Wales and the World's Calendar is an online calendar hosted on the library's main website. It was created to further give visibility to our collection and engage with our audiences. Wales and the World's Calendar was launched in October last year. This calendar marks various religious, cultural awareness, diversity, and memorial events, as well as public holidays. The calendar has proven to be very important and very resourceful because it connects people. It also connects these people with events that mean something to them. And in turn, these events that are being captured on this calendar that are being captured on this calendar are also connected to items in our collection, such as books, archival materials, photographs, and more. For example, it includes events like the World Braille Day, Martin Luther King Jr. Day, the Woody Day, Pride Month, among many others. It also serves as a resource material within and outside the library, showcasing its diverse collection and identifying the gaps to be improved upon. Secondly, the library has hosted 2 exhibitions that highlight these efforts. For example, the Reflection exhibition during the Black History Month, which was instrumental in raising awareness and fostering dialogue about the importance of race and identity. This exhibition was also curated to celebrate the contributions of Black people in Wales, and it was captured under 5 themes, which was music, arts, empire, campaigns, and education. On display were pictures and materials pertaining to Betty Campbell, Shirley Bassey, and Paul Robson. That's just to mention a few people who were focused upon. And secondly, we also had, most recently was the Asia Through the Lens exhibition, which showcased Asia through various perspectives in pictures and audiovisual resources. This exhibition was also brought to light our collections, which have been underexplored, and brought together various communities to enjoy our resources, but also it gave an opportunity, or it created an atmosphere for people to reflect on the dangers of stereotypes. Revising our archival description is also one of the activities which we've embarked on. In revising archival description, our goal is to address outdated or harmful languages in our archival description, ensuring that they are more reflective of the diverse communities and peoples we serve. We have subjected our catalogue to analysis in partnership with the Archives Regulatory Council of Wales, and the results that came forth from the survey showed the need for an earnest work on revising our description. It is of great importance to create ethical, respectful, and accurate description of records created about people of Black, Asian, and underrepresented communities within and outside Wales. This project also means that we bring in people to know their opinions about certain items that have been tagged problematic. So it's important to note that as archivists, we know we can never undermine the importance of maintaining authentic archival descriptions and metadata. And as a result of that, the strategy which we've put in place is providing extra information in our catalog entries instead of just wiping those problematic descriptions. Community engagement and participation is also another activity which we've embarked on. Community engagement is a cornerstone of our decolonization effort. We believe that involving the community in this project not only enriches our work, but also ensures that it is relevant and impactful. We have collaborated with various community groups and organizations to ensure that our initiatives are inclusive and representative. As a result of this, we have partnered with various organizations in organizing workshops, creating activities and educational materials. We've also provided support and training to communities who are interested in preserving history. We've also worked with an example of some of the communities we've worked with is the Chinese Association in Wales. We've worked with Kiran, Kamari, and we've also worked with the North Wales African Society. We've also worked with diverse communities to create educational materials, educational instructional materials targeting pupils of various ages on various topics such as immigration, Ramadans, and Wales anti-apartheid movement. so far, those materials have been used in various schools in Wales, and we've also had students from schools visiting to consult those materials. The materials are very colorful and engaging, so it gives a room to, it simplifies difficult topics for kids to understand and assimilate when it comes to issues of diversity. And also, in 2023, the library commissioned 4 artists to create new artworks focused on the difficult and contested histories of slavery and colonialism. This meant acquiring new works that reflects the diverse histories and experiences of the people in Wales. By doing so, we strive to create more inclusive and representative collection that speaks to all members of our community. This project had 3 key aims, which was to support artists of underrepresented communities in Wales, develop artistic response to collection items, and diversify the national art collection. The library worked with artists such as Joshua Donko, Adeola Davis, Jasmine Violet, and Fikela Jean Samuel. Their works have been on display on various exhibitions in the library. So how did we do it, or how are we doing it? Unlike most projects where it's usually plan, review, and then you go back to it. First of all, I always what has worked for me and my team is we get everyone on board. So apart from the fact that the Welsh government had already created this act, it was important that before we commence any work or get anything rolling, we had to get not just management, but our staff, everyone in the library had to be on the same page. I am not saying that everyone agrees to it or it's a smooth ride, but it's on paper, or to an extent, everyone is aware of what's happening. So when you go to meet people or request for help, it's not being denied. And secondly, as always, you plan, draw blueprints and all of that. Then we review our progresses to know where we have fallen short, and of course learn, because no one knows it all when it comes to issues of diversity and race and decolonization. So it's like a learning curve. We do all these things, we learn, and then we go back to the drawing board again to do it all over again. Improved, of course. So key elements of our project worth considering. First of all, as the speaker before me stated, collaboration is of utmost importance. You can't do it alone, and you can't take it all by yourself. So it's important to collaborate internally and externally. Hence why we are all here, to meet and network and find ways which we can move this motion forward. So collaborating with your colleagues would mean people you do not get the wrong vibe or negative approach when you need people to digitize items for you and all of that, and it will get your project moving as far as it will take your project to the extent in which you want it to go. Secondly, the whole idea of sustainability. Funding is a problem in our profession, and then finding people with skills and expertise can also be problematic. So when we talk of sustainability, we have been able to create projects with very little funding, but projects that are impactful and withstand the test of time. So for instance, something with, I'll give a typical example with the calendar itself. It's being updated on a yearly basis, but as far as I'm concerned, it can be hosted by the library's website for a lifetime. But all that needs doing is someone coming in to update the dates on a yearly basis. Also, with relationships with people, you are certain that even if the funding or the project is over with, that relationship that you've been able to build with these people can be worked and improved upon if it is honest. And the third and most it's not the most important, but it's very essential. So when it comes to projects of diversity and decolonization, most times people from marginalized communities find it very tokenistic, because it's when money comes and then everyone goes out looking for someone or looking for this organization. Hey, there's money, come here, let's work on this. But if you're able to build a relationship with people and you create projects that are not just meant for ticking boxes, but that connects and people are involved and engaged and enjoy, you also and enjoy, you would be able to go far. And that also means that people would come, people who you create these relationships with would also come to you for advice, and then also invite you for their own events. You would, it's advisable and it's polite enough that you show participation for their own events as much as they show interest for your own projects too. So okay. On that note, I am coming to an end, but then I would want to also state that we haven't figured it all out. We are working so hard. We've made mistakes and we've also had wins. But the goal and the motivation has been that we are not giving up, and we hope that Wales will be anti-racist by 2030. So thank you.